G'day and welcome to Bob. This little topic of a video, hopefully the wind isn't too bad, it just is what it is, it's that type of day. It's a beautiful day, it's like 23 degrees right now. Fuel mapping. This bike, okay, runs great, no problem there, but when it's like below 15 degrees, this bike, you have to hold the throttle to keep it running long enough for it to warm up long enough to stay running, and then it idles like at 1500, where it should be idling probably around 1800 when warmed up, right? But it's kind of like it warms up, it'll idle normal after, say, about 5 minutes once you hit operational temperature, but then when you ride it around and it gets really warmed up, then the idle drops again. But it seems like it only does it when the temperature's cooler. So I guess like carburetors, the fuel injections, it's a different setup, but it does the same thing. Springtime, fall, you probably run lean, whatever, which then you have to do idle adjustments. But the thing with the fuel injection is you have to fuel map it, which is something this is my first fuel injection bike as well. And the thing is that I'm looking at the Tune ECU program. I've seen other people use it. If you've used it, let me know. It's the 10166 program that's recommended for this bike to smooth out all the fuel mapping, to modernize it a little bit. I'm trying to download that one. I'm not going to do it anytime soon, so you'll have to get the OBD2 reader to USB, I guess, to do it all. There's just one little tool in the program, and it'll readjust the idle. So it's not like it's the same concept as a carbureted bike where you adjust it at different times of the year. But the only thing is how often does I thought the fuel injection system would do that automatically. Now, mind you, this is 2002 technology, right? So even though it's a 2003 bike, it's 2002 model that was run in 2003. So maybe it was just the infancy of and I hear a lot of the early Triumphs were like that, where you have to remap the fueling system every now and then. I don't know if there's much you can do about it other than, if you're doing it yourself, it's not a big pain in the ass. Just you might have to do it every couple of months throughout the riding season. But is that normal for a fuel injection to not be able to adjust to the weather conditions completely? It could be other things too. I mean, the injector, obviously even though this bike doesn't really have a lot of mileage on it for the year, when I bought it, it had 27,270 kilometers on it, okay? I've already got over 34, maybe 35,000 kilometers on it, 6,000 of 5 to 6,000 of which are mine, right? So the guy that had it before me, or the guys, or whoever had it before me, they didn't really ride the piss out of this bike. It's still just, I think it's just getting around to its first valve service, maybe. So I'll be checking all that stuff out too a little bit later on. Throughout the season, I'll just be doing kind of like upkeep maintenance for this bike. But when it comes to the fuel injection system, maybe some of my injectors are getting a bit worn, just old from age, that type of thing. Not that they're really worn out, but they're just old, and maybe they're getting a bit weak or something like that. So I'll be testing all that stuff later on too. But the first thing I'm going to do is try a plug change, whether it needs it or not, because I like the zero time thing, so I know when it was last done. But that's just me. I know everybody's different on that. Well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But if that, kind of takes care of any of the weird idling problems, the bike definitely does. It still runs very smooth, but it doesn't run as smooth as the day I bought it. The day I bought it, man, this thing was smooth from the bottom to the top. It still is now. Now it's starting to get a little bit vibraty at certain RPMs, a little bit more loud at that 4,500 RPM. Sounds like you're strangling a billy goat. It's just the weirdest sound. But these bikes were known for doing that. The bike is still pretty smooth even at low speed. It's not too bunty. It doesn't feel like you're trying to do the Heimlich maneuver to it too much. It is a pretty smooth bike. Above 5,000 and up, obviously, it just runs perfect. But it's more the idle. The other thing is if I do the Tune ECU, one of the things I probably want to do, because I guess all fairing bikes do run hot. There's nothing you can do about that. This is definitely not a bike that I think will do well. I could see overheating it in the traffic, although I haven't done it yet. But I haven't sat in traffic for like a long enough period of time where I get paranoid when I get into traffic with this bike, just because, I just don't want to get stranded, right? So things happen, whatever. But me, it's more I just can't afford to fix it. So it's like, it's like I can barely afford to run it, let alone fix it. So yeah, I definitely don't want to overheat the engine. The fan kicks on about at 103, 101 or 103. But I think if I did the tune ECU, I'd probably lower it to about 95 or 97. So it never gets into the 105, 100. Hottest I've ever seen this bike run in traffic was 106. And they say at 109, shut her down. But the problem is if you shut it down, the fan stays on. And I don't know how much draw that fan has. So, will it kill your battery, whatever. And this bike, it's one of those bikes, if the battery's dead, you can't even bump start it. It's just weird the way it's set up. It's not like the old bikes where you could have a dead battery, do a Scooby-Doo run and jump on it and pop the clutch and it would get it going and it'd come back up. No, this, if the battery's dead, I've already put one battery on it. The battery that was in it, I don't know why it died. I guess it was no battery, but it's a new battery that I do have in it. And just one of those things, Charging system seems to be fine on this bike, but the fueling is the one thing that I'm new with it. If I was going to do anything with it, number one is just smooth out the idle from bottom to top. Put the RPM at 1800 when warmed up. If I have to hold the throttle a little bit to warm it up, that's fine. I'm okay with that as long as it starts okay. This bike still starts pretty good. When it's warm like this, you don't touch the throttle at all. You just hit the button. It goes right to 2,000 RPM, and then it comes down a bit once it hits 40 or 41 Celsius. The bike's ready to run. So I always even on a nice day like today, I let the bike hit operational temperature. I don't just turn it on and go. I kind of baby things. I don't do wheelies on it. I don't do burnouts on it. If I had a second bike, maybe I'd be a little bit more whatever. But as far as the power delivery, I like where everything is. If I was going to set it up, because this is basically a street bike, I would probably lower the power band down to maybe 7,000 RPM instead of having it at 11.5, if you could do that. It sounds like with the TuneCore thing, you can move the power band to kick on a little bit sooner. I wouldn't want it to kick on any sooner than that, because I normally ride around 5,000. That's pretty much 6-gear speed limit on the road. At 55, the power starts coming on gradually. At 6, you notice it. At 7, it starts to get fun. Above 7, it gets very lively, and then 10 above, it's just like insanity beyond whatever. And this thing I haven't taken it to 15,000, but I have taken it to 14.5. So what I would do is I would obviously put the rev limiter maybe at 14, just so you're never going to blow your engine. Well, never say never, but you don't need all that power anyway. Peak power on this bike is around 11.5, so they say, for the peak horse and peak torque. Also, I would probably, like I say, put the power band on around 7, so you have more usable down low. Put more of the power in the mid-range where it's more usable. I wouldn't put it too low. I'd like to have a little more power on the bottom end. Who wouldn't? But I also don't want to be spinning out in the rain. You know what I mean? So the nice thing about this bike, the way it's set up right now, is the power's there if you need it. You don't have to use it if you don't want to. You can actually ride this bike on the rain, in the grit, with snow still on the ground. You can ride this bike without feeling like it's going to spin out on you. But like anything, it doesn't take much to turn the power on this thing. This bike moves pretty good. So the only thing I would do again is just see if I've seen other people have smoothed it out. It's more just to make sure that the idling is proper. But I'm going to, again, try the plugs first. My injectors, I just filled up a tank, so this will be my third tank of fuel on this bike this season. So I burnt off pretty much all the winter stuff. I'm going to put some injector cleaner in there. Injector cleaner runs really nice in this bike. So I'm going to do that, and then once I do that, I'll probably, like I say, mission to Triumph and see if I can pick up some spark plugs. It's NGKs that Triumph recommends for this bike. So the Canadian Tire had 2 of them up in Chauvel, and I don't want to do that because you know what happens. You buy 2 of those plugs, and then, those ones are phased out and they're bringing in another one. I don't like mix matching, even if they're replacing it with a similar plug. I like to have 4 of all the same. Again, maybe these plugs are original to the bike. Maybe they're old, maybe they're new. I don't know. I can imagine though, if when I got this thing, I got it from the Triumph dealer as a trade-in, right? Somebody traded in. They had new chain sprockets, oil change, filter change. Looked like a brand new air filter in there. I cleaned that the other day, and obviously the system would have been flushed. It was tuned up, ready to go. So I really don't think they would have skipped out on the plugs. So those plugs are probably new too. But some bikes you got to change plugs every season. Depends on some bikes you could put the same plugs in them. You could put used plugs in them from 50 years ago and they'll still run. It's just every bike's different. So I'm going to try new plugs, see if that makes a difference for the idling. But it could be just the temperature, because today I noticed that the bike idled normally. It did idle a bit low after it was warmed up after the run when I stopped for gas or whatever. I did notice it was idling just a bit low. It's not that it's terribly low. It's 1500 is not too bad, but it feels like it's a little bit rough, and it feels like it's going to stall. And I don't like stalling in traffic because I hate restarting. I like, you start the bike, you ride to where you're going to go, you get off the bike, you stop the bike, and then when you got to go again, you got to fresh start. I don't like starting the bike and starting the bike and starting the bike. Although this bike hasn't left me anywhere. Last year there was that weird scare I got up in Maniwaki. The bike was rolling over, but it just wouldn't start. So I don't know what happened, if it was just too hot. And I still haven't figured that one out. So I've been a little bit paranoid with this bike, getting it too hot and everything like that. But I know at least the oil is completely changed. I'll be topping up the radiator fluid. And maybe it seems like the new oil change actually helped the bike idle better. So maybe that's what it was. And some bikes are like that. If the oil gets too dirty, it just doesn't run right. And I don't know what oil they put in this bike when I bought it. They could have put 1040 in there, which might have been too thin. There's no way to know. It was new oil, and it still was fairly clean when I changed it. It was getting a bit dirty, but it wasn't. It probably could have got another season on that oil change. But now I know exactly when the oil was changed, so later this afternoon I'll know exactly when the radiator was topped up. I'm probably going to try engine ice for the radiator. Do that. But yeah, you guys tell me, your experience with remapping and stuff like that. For me, I'm not thinking racetrack at all. I'm thinking, how do I keep the power more in the mid-range? How do I make the bike get better mileage? Better low end, real street rideability is, even if I lost 40 kilometers or 60 kilometers off the top end of the bike, it's still too fast, this is a 150 mile an hour bike, believe it or not. It's just unbelievably fast for what it is. Not unbelievably fast, but it's fast enough. 0 to 100 miles an hour on this bike is it's seconds. It's it's supercar performance for $3,000. If you add up all the taxes and everything, okay, $4,000, $4,500, whatever it was. So it's just ridiculous what you can get out of these little machines. Still handles like a dream. After I'm done with the changing the plugs, doing the not the plugs, but the radiator, topping that up. My next thing is to get this bike jacked up somehow so I can basically pull the back wheel, clean up the bearings, repack them, put them back on, adjust the chain, and then that way, that's the only problem with sport bikes is how do you jack these darn things up with I don't have the stands for it, right? And I ran out of money just as before I could get the front and the rear stand, because I like to zero time everything, and it's just good motorcycle maintenance. It'll last a lot longer. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up on that. So I just thought it was a quick discussion that I'd do. Went on a bit long, but you guys tell me what your experience is with fuel injection. How often do you have to remap it? Would you try it yourself, etc., etc. All right, have a great day.